Alright, I have created a JPEG in Photoshop, just a little drawing. Image size 720 by 480, which is the standard NTSC size, not HD but NTSC. Our peasant girl is 288 by 387, which is fine because she's going to sit on that 720 by 480 landscape. Jumping over into After Effects, I'm going to make a new composition that same size. The 720 by 480. I could do this in HD, but it's just not what I'm doing right now. And I'm going to go ahead and import that background JPEG into After Effects. It's fine to have it as footage. That's fine. I just need it as a single JPEG in the background of my comp, in this case called comp 1. But I am going to go and do a file import file on the Photoshop file of the girl. One heads up is it does need to be imported as a composition. I'm going to keep all those layers that I brought over. Go ahead and keep editable layer styles, live Photoshop 3D. Doesn't directly apply to what we're doing. And now I have two comps, comp 1 and the girl comp. Comp 1 I'll go ahead and rename and call it my main timeline, since the girl is, I'm going to pull her onto that main timeline with a pastoral scene background. If I double click on the girl comp, we can see all those layers that I had in Photoshop now in After Effects. It does have the background layer, the layer 0, the gray. I don't need that because I'm going to place her on my JPEG pastoral scene on the main timeline, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to go back to my main timeline and I will go ahead and pull that girl comp into the main timeline. And you can tell by the sort of beige color bar that she's pre-comped. We don't see all of her layers because we've dragged her into the main timeline. I can double click on her, and I wanted to show you that when I double click on her, any one of her layers, what I'm doing is I'm moving the anchor point from the center of that image to the corner. For instance, I'm bringing the anchor point to her elbow, and in the last image I brought it to the top of her shoulder. I'm now bringing the anchor point to her neck, which I'll change later on in the video, as you can see. I have this anchor point on her skirt. Basically, I'm saying that she should rotate, and those different parts of her body should rotate from this newly placed anchor point that I'm defining by double clicking on each one of the layers, getting into the layer window. I'm not in the composition, I'm actually in the layer window of each layer in my composition. When I jump back to the composition, it's all disorganized because I now have the anchor point, in that case in the elbow or at the base of her neck, so I need to reposition her body correctly. I'm just going to go through and pull each layer up and organize her the way I had her before. The idea is that when I begin to animate, she'll now animate appropriately, right? Not from the center of where the layer was, but she'll animate from her upper left-hand shoulder or her elbow or whatever might be the case. Now, I didn't show you in this video, but I did make all of these layers 3D. And I want to use that 3D space for my rotations. Let's see, I'm going to go down to the lower left arm here, which is highlighted. And I'm going to go to the upper left arm. And I'm going to start animating that. I'm just going to twirl down the transform in this case. And I just want to show you here, when I do a Z rotation on her, because I made that anchor point in her upper left hand corner, her arm rotates from that spot. It's very realistic, and it's basically hinging. Now I don't want to do an X-axis or a Y-axis because it's trying to move her arm in the incorrect direction in the 3D space. I'm going to go ahead and create a keyframe for her Z rotation. And and go out a little bit and rotate her arm. Seems to be fine, just a little bit to give her some life. And then I'm going to go ahead and jump to her lower left arm. And in this case, I just hit P, and it opens up the position for the X, Y, and Z rotation. Or I'm sorry, R for rotation. So I use the keyboard shortcut. Now I went back to the upper arm, and I'm jumping back to where I put my first keyframe under that transform. And I'm going to add a keyframe for my Z rotation, and I'm going to go out. I'm jumping out to my second keyframe that I made in her upper left arm, and now I'm in the correct spot for a Z rotation. Great. Well, it's rotating. It's not exactly what we want, right? Because it is rotating, but her arm is stuck out into space. So I'm going to go ahead and I just hit P. So I have the position transform property downloaded, and again I'm jumping back and forth between the keyframes in the upper left arm so that now I can click on my stopwatch and go back to that transform and jump ahead to get to the second space where I can change the position. So now, because I'm moving her arm from position A to position B, we see the motion path, which, you know, if this were some part of her body that needed easing or anything like that, I would be able to do so using, I'd be able to correct that easing using the motion path. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. Oh, by the way, you can hit the tilde and you can see all. You can hit the tilde in any one of your palettes, but in this case it allows me to see all of my timeline. And now let's scrub over so that we can see what this animation is going to look like. Actually I'm going to put a position. What I'm doing now is actually putting a position for the upper arm because it was shifting slightly and overlapping. So now what I'm doing is just scrubbing back and forth so we can see. And now I'm moving to the upper left arm and rotating it. This upper left arm I don't think needs that position change. I'm sorry, right arm. And then the lower right arm. And again, I will want to rotate it and change the position. Now I'm painstakingly jumping back and forth between the keyframes, but I could put a marker in there so that I could see the jump between the two. I'm doing it kind of the long way so that you can see I'm matching my animation keyframe to keyframe. Okay, so I've got my position and my rotation worked on for my lower right arm. There's some problematic issues with this original drawing, like her upper right arm should be shaded and her hand's a little bit long, but that's okay. It's part of the charm of the piece. Okay, so she's animating back and forth.